Pronunciation Pro.
Pronunciation Pro.
Hello again, and welcome to the Pronunciation Pro podcast. My name is Annie Rudin, and I am the host here at the Pronunciation Pro podcast and the founder and creator of the Pronunciation Pro online training program. So if you have not checked out Pronunciation Pro, go to pronunciationpro.com and you can sign up for a 7-day trial of my program. And basically, you'll get a bit of a feel for my program during the 7-day trial. But what I want you to kind of look at is there's group training and there's private training. And so as you get into that trial, you'll have an idea of how the program works and get a feel for like what you need. And really, I offer free consultations as well. And so if you get into the program and want to schedule a consultation to see whether you need private or if group will work, or, exactly what program would be the best fit for you and your situation, just go ahead and sign up for a free consultation. I would love to meet you and would love to be able to help kind of create a path, a customized plan for you so that you can move forward with confidence, knowing you're going to get the results you need in the next 3 to 6 months. That's kind of our guarantee, is especially with our private lessons. We usually see about 50% improvement within 3 months and 80% improvement within 6 months. And we've been doing this for 15 years. And so we have thousands of students that have kind of gone through the program. And so we know, we know we have a proven system, or we wouldn't be in business this long. So it definitely works. So today our topic is breaking free from the comparison trap. So I've seen lately, I've been noticing more and more, and this is something that kind of I've known and we've trained and coached on quite a bit through the years, but just this last week it kept surfacing again. This big mistake that a lot of my students are making without really realizing it. Okay. Many of my students think that they're doing something productive and motivating for themselves when really it's doing the opposite. And so I want to dive in and kind of talk about this, this comparison trap and the way that it shows up with a lot of my students and the way that we coach around it and make sure that they can get out of it. Before I jump into that topic, there were a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. First of all, I'm going to be presenting at the TESOL conference, which is Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. So that's the national or international organization for English teachers. Now, this is something that's kind of a little bit new to me because I'm a speech pathologist. I've kind of followed along in that world for many years, but really, I just discovered the last couple of years that I really belong more in the TESOL world since I'm working with non-native English speakers and helping with pronunciation. However, what I realized last year when I went to the conference is that most English teachers don't really understand how to teach pronunciation very well. And so I think as a speech pathologist, I know as a speech pathologist, I have much more specialized training in being able to specifically focus on pronunciation and accent and really have very proven methods to improve that in a short amount of time. And so I was realizing at the conference last year that a lot of the strategies that most English teachers are using are very either outdated or incomplete. And so I'm giving a presentation about, the topic is speech pathologist pronunciation method for English learners. And so what this tells me is as you've been learning English, you were probably taught English by an English teacher who didn't understand pronunciation very well. And so it's no wonder that you're struggling with pronunciation and how to use the American accent when you speak English, because most English teachers are not equipped to be able to teach that. And so that's where my specialty comes in and where I can really help guide you. On this podcast, we tend to not specifically talk about specific, rules or sounds or specifics about pronunciation. I do dive into it a bit here, but it's because it's so unique to the person and it's really hard to kind of globalize pronunciation skills. Essentially, you need to figure out what error patterns you're doing in your spoken English, which sounds are you saying incorrectly, and do you understand the rhythm of American English, the word stress, the sentence stress, the intonation patterns. And that has to be taught and trained in a systematic way for you to really develop the long-term skills involved in speaking English clearly and with greater confidence. We tend to concentrate a little bit more on the confidence piece and the mindset piece in this podcast, just because that is something that can be more global. It's all of my students, almost, pretty much all of my students struggle with these mindset barriers. And when they can understand and kind of shift these barriers, it makes a huge, huge difference in the way that they can move forward in their practice of pronunciation and their understanding of how to keep practicing in a way that doesn't emotionally, it doesn't cause a lot of emotional trauma or stress. And that's really it, is we want to make sure your energy is focused in a very positive, very efficient way as you're learning English, because English is hard. It's very challenging, and you're usually having to do it on top of learning a new culture and probably job changes or school changes and everything like that. So we need to make this process as easy as possible and as emotionally smooth as possible. And that's what I'm here to help you do. The other thing I wanted to mention before we get started is, I don't know if you can see it. For those who are watching on YouTube, my shirt here says AZ Brain Food. And I just got back this morning from going and volunteering at an organization that packs lunches or packs food for students, kind of elementary, younger age students, to take home with them over the weekend. So it's for families who maybe are lower income and they don't have enough food to feed their families over the weekend here in the United States. And so we go and pack this food and give it to them. The reason I'm bringing this up is because a lot of my students are looking for ways to have more conversations in English and to connect with their communities more. And volunteer work is an excellent way for you to get out, use your English, connect with your community, understand culturally in a very safe environment. Volunteers are usually treated quite well and just appreciated so much. And so they're very eager to help you in any way possible. And so if you're looking for service opportunities, there is a website called justserve.org. Okay, I'll put that in the show notes so that you know about it. But it has any location. This is more US, Canada, I think US, Canada. They might have things international, around the world. So you might have to take a look, but justserve.org is an organization that helps gather all of the community service events and needs from different areas, and so that it's easy to know what is needed in your area and where to go, when to sign up, how you can volunteer and use your skills and your talents to help out. So it's just a really great way to get out and involved and part of your community. So it's, making connections with people. It's practicing your English. There's just so many wonderful things about it. Okay. All right, let's get going. So first I want to tell a story, kind of give an example of our topic here today of kind of breaking free from the comparison trap. So I have a student named Shinar, and she gave a great analogy. She said, So a little background with Shinar is her primary language, her mother tongue is Kazakh. Okay, so she's been speaking Kazakh for 42 years. And then when she was 6 or 7, she started learning Russian. Okay. And she even said, like, when she started learning Russian, she was, made fun of quite a bit from other students and people, just that she didn't do it right and that she sounded funny. And so, we have kind of coached through some of that trauma of, your brain remembers when you have had emotionally difficult situations, especially as a child, and it will remember that and pull into your adult life some of those maybe fears or hesitations associated with language learning. So be aware of that, I guess, that could be a factor of why it's so difficult for you to make mistakes or to be okay, to fear that judgment from others. It might be kind of going back to some of those experiences as a young person. But anyway, she had been speaking Kazakh for 42 years, Russian for around 36 or 37 years, 35 to 36 years. And what she was saying is, and she's been speaking English for 3 years. Okay. And she's living in the US right now, going to school. And she was saying that, it was very frustrating for her because she saw herself as a really good speaker in Kazakh and Russian. Like when she's speaking her native language or Russian, she is very articulate, has a great vocabulary. It flows very easily. She has kind of seen herself as this is a skill set that I have that's fantastic. And I really take a lot of pride in it. Okay. So now that she's speaking English, she doesn't have nearly as much experience with it. The way she described it is that instead of painting masterpieces with my words and my language, she feels like she's just scribbling like a little kid with crayons. It's like she's just scribbling and not really able to kind of create the art that she's used to creating. And so this has been a struggle because it is a huge loss of identity. When you see yourself as a good speaker and you communicate so well in your native language, and then you go to a new language, it's like, I have to start as like a child again. And you feel like you revert back to just this very basic language skills that you were using when you were a young child. And so that feeling is real. Okay. That feeling is very, very real. And so she was frustrated with that. And she was like, I just don't like it, but bothers me that I'm used to painting masterpieces and now I just have to scribble. And she was kind of beating up herself as if she was behind. Like I'm really behind in my language skills. Because what she's doing, and this is the big mistake that I see so many of my students doing, is that they are comparing themselves. They're comparing their English to their native language. So their native language, let's just take Kazakh for for this example, 42 years she's had practice speaking Kazakh. Okay. 42 years. Okay. That is a significant amount of time and practice versus 3 years speaking English. Okay. I wish it wasn't the case that we had to start from the beginning, with new languages, and some can progress a lot faster than others. I understand that there's kind of gifts and talents for languages, but to say, like, compare those two is going to produce frustration for you. It's going to produce this very scarcity mindset of thinking that you're behind somehow, that you are trying to catch up to that native language, the skill of that native language. Now, I recommend, and this is kind of part of the coaching that we look at, is we have to separate those. These are two different skills. So it's not just that like you're painting a masterpiece and now you have to go back to crayons. It's a whole different skill set. So it's like you can paint a masterpiece in Kazakh, but now you're working with, stained glass art. Now your medium is glass. And now you're creating art with glass. Now it's a totally different skill set. Okay? So of course you're going to have to start from the beginning with that form of art. You're going to have to start with the basics, the fundamentals, and start piecing it together. And of course, you're going to need to get the practice and practice to be able to become a master in that art. Okay, so think of languages as that. It's not just doing the exact same thing, even though it feels that way because it's communication, right? It's all the same when we're talking about verbalizing and communicating our thoughts. But if you can kind of think of it as like, oh, my English is like this new hobby, this new skill that I'm developing that's totally different than what I've done before. And of course, I'm going to have to start from the beginning and work my way up. Okay. So comparison, okay. Comparison, if we can kind of break free of that trap that we get into of comparing our native language to our second or third or fourth language, English. Comparing your native language to English is not a fair comparison. So let's just break free of that and start seeing it as a completely different skill set that you're practicing and training. Because if you were to start picking up the violin, okay, if you were to start saying, okay, I'm going to learn the violin, I'm going to start learning the violin, you wouldn't have this expectation that you're going to be able to master it very quickly. Okay, even if you had, maybe you had played the guitar before or the ukulele or, some other stringed instrument, it's a totally different instrument. It's a totally different skill set. And maybe there's some carryover from one to the next. But for the most part, you're having to move your mouth, move your hands and your arms in a different way. And you're going to need to, learn the sound and the technique of that instrument and how it's going to flow and what the little nuances are of that new instrument. So let's think of it as in that light and see how that can shift your brain out of this scarcity, I'm behind and I have to catch up as quickly as possible, versus, hey, I've only been, speaking English for 3 years. Look how far I've come in 3 years. So let's compare ourselves to what we used to be. Okay. You're probably doing so much better now than when you started learning English. Okay, so let's really kind of compare that growth and see that progress in ourselves and see that it's not that you're coming from behind. Maybe you're ahead of the game. Maybe you're doing phenomenally well for someone who has only been speaking for English for 3 years. Okay? We have to be kind to ourselves. Our brains do not work as well in scarcity as they do in abundance. Abundant mentality of like, oh, I'm doing really well and let's see how much better I can get. Or, I've made this much progress. Let's see how much more progress I can make in the next year, in the next, 6 months to year and a half. Okay. That abundant mentality of I am enough and let's see what more I can do just because it's fun. That energy is high frequency energy. Okay. And maybe we need to get into that high and low frequency energy concept. And I might pull that in, but high frequency energy is abundance. It's love, it's peace, it's compassion. It's, all these wonderful emotions that just ignite our brain, versus those low frequency energies or frequencies of scarcity, lack, that negativity, the fear, the doubt, the I'm not enough kind of mentality. Okay. those kind of frequencies are not going to, supercharge us. It's not going to motivate us when we're operating in those low frequency energies. So we want to pull ourselves into those higher frequency energies of abundance and joy and peace and fun and excitement, because that's what's going to really motivate continued learning. All right. Another trap that I see a lot of my students fall into is comparing themselves to other native English speakers. Okay, this is a trap that we have to get out of. They're speaking in their native language. They've had their whole life to practice. If they were comparing themselves to your native language, of course you would be far superior. Okay? That's not the comparison that needs to happen. Okay, again, comparing yourself, or healthy comparison would be seeing a native English speaker who is somebody that you really admire and you love the way they sound, and you're like, ooh, I want to do it like them. Okay, maybe it's another non-native English speaker who you hear and you're like, whoa, if they can do it, I can too. Okay, that is really motivating. That's a high frequency energy. That kind of comparison can be very energizing and motivating. But if it's I can't believe I'm not as good as them, I'm never going to be as good as those native English speakers, why should I even try? That energy is getting us nowhere. And we need to cut that energy out. That is scarcity. That is not abundance. So, as you're going into a speaking situation, especially with other native English speakers, being able to say, I might not have the same, communication skills or as good of communication skills as those around me, but I also bring to the table, because I speak English as another language, I bring to this meeting, I bring to this situation some really interesting perspective and experience and expertise that these native speakers don't have. Okay. You're able to use parts of your brain and do things that they don't have. So it's not apples to apples, comparing apples to apples. It's apples to oranges. And you just can't compare the two. Okay? So let's get out of that trap of that comparison. One of the sayings I used to have up on my wall was, comparison is the thief of joy. Because I like you, I struggle in comparing myself to other people. Well, they have, this business, or they have all these amazing skills, but look at me, I don't have those same skills. And so now I'm feeling less than, or I'm feeling depleted, because what's the point? Why should I even try? That is energy we do not want to entertain. We don't want to kind of bask in that. I call it indulgent emotions. It's just indulgent. It's not helping us in any way. It's kind of indulging on a big, box of cookies. It's like that's not going to do us any good. It's just indulging in something unhealthy. Okay, so let's not mentally indulge in that junk food. Comparison is junk food. Unhealthy comparison is junk food. Again, let's find people who we admire and that motivate us, that we want to be, good speakers like them. That is healthy comparison. All right. Now I have to kind of finish up with this last story from Shinar. It was really interesting because she said that as she's been listening to the Pronunciation Pro podcast, and she found me through the podcast, and then we set up a consult call, and now she's doing private lessons with Pronunciation Pro. And so as we've been talking and meeting, she actually told me this last session, she told me that, she's going to school at the University of Boston. And when she first arrived, the International Student Organization it just wasn't very helpful for her. She didn't find the support that she needed as she was kind of going through that process. And as she got further in and more experience there at the university and things like that, And she got courage to use her voice. She said the podcast has helped her just have more courage to speak up more and to practice more and to use her voice, because she's a little bit older than most of the students there, has more experience, has more wisdom, and realized that, hey, the International Student Organization really should have helped more in these specific ways. Here are ways that they kind of dropped the ball, or they just didn't follow through and didn't do a good job in supporting me as a new student. And so she said she went in and she started talking to people at the International Student Organization there. And she started communicating some of these frustrations and these things that really should be different there. And she's instigating some change there in the International Student Organization and kind of getting the attention of people there and saying, hey, this is not okay. These are the things that we need as a new student to really support us and help us in this transition process, because it doesn't have to be so hard for us if we had these certain support systems. And so I was just so proud of her. She was feeling like she was so proud of herself too, that she had the courage and used her voice in that way to not only advocate for herself, but especially advocate for other students like her that are coming in and could really use more assistance. So proud of you. And that's just one example of things that you all are doing in your lives every day. Like, that's the thing, is if I knew all the things that you guys were doing daily to use your voice, to speak up, to make change, to make your world and the world around you better because of the way that you are using your voice, I think I would just be blown away. I hear these stories often with my students, and I just absolutely love it. I love it for you. I love it for me. I love it for all of us, that we are living in a world where you are feeling empowered to use your voice, and you're getting the skills, the communication skills and the English skills to a place where you have that confidence to speak up and say what needs to be said. Okay, so proud of you, so proud of Shinar, so proud of just taking that initiative and saying, okay, I'm ready to be confident, and I'm going to keep moving forward and get the help that I need. So proud of all of you. Definitely go check out pronunciationpro.com if you haven't already. We would love to have you come join us. We're coming down to the end of the year, so let's not wait till January to start our goals for the new year. I always love it when I get in, I'm going to the gym and doing things through the holidays and not just waiting until January to start to like keep myself moving forward. But whenever it is the right time for you, we are here for you, and we're excited to work with you. So come join us. All right. Good talking to you today, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Pronunciation Pro.
Pronunciation Pro.